So, if you stand perfectly still in a lush garden for long enough, you just might get passed by a plant.
Which, I mean, sounds completely absurd.
Right, because we operate on this fundamental assumption that flora is stationary. Like we think of plants as permanently anchored
Yeah,
objects.
they put down roots, and that is their permanent address for the rest of their natural lives.
Exactly. They do not, pack their bags and stroll down the sidewalk. But today we're going to look at a biological marvel that literally walks across the dirt step by step.
It's just incredible.
It really is. So, welcome to another deep dive. Our mission today is to explore the profound beauty of everyday observation, and we are doing it through a single, incredibly charming journal entry.
It's such a great source for this.
Yeah, it's a blog post from an author named Eng. It's titled Notes on Gardening, Part 959, Revisiting the Yellow Walking Iris, Trimezia longifolia. And this was published on July 18th, 2026.
It is a remarkable piece of writing, mostly because of, well, how understated it is.
Yeah.
On the surface, it's just a snapshot of a mundane moment.
Just a totally normal day.
Right. But beneath that surface, Aang packs in this dense layer of botany, taxonomy, and, a philosophical look at the mindset required to actually observe the natural world around you.
And here's where it gets really interesting. This isn't just a random Sunday afternoon musing. Did you catch the title? It is Part 959.
I know that number is just, it's wild.
Let that sink in for a moment for you, the listener. 959 distinct documented entries. I mean, the sheer volume of observation that implies is staggering.
It completely frames everything we're about to unpack.
Yeah.
Because writing your 959th note on a subject means you have moved way beyond amateur dabbling.
You're not just a weekend warrior at that point.
Exactly. You are no longer just looking for the biggest, most colorful blooms in some pristine, manicured botanical garden. You have cultivated a mindset of sustained, relentless patience.
Which is pretty rare these days.
Oh, absolutely. You're hunting for the micro changes, the biological mechanisms, and those everyday miracles that the rest of society is just walking right past without a second thought.
And that actually sets up the scene for this specific post perfectly. Because Aang is not on some grand expedition deep in the Amazon rainforest.
Nope. Just running errands.
Right. Just waiting by the side of the road. I mean, most of us, when we're stuck waiting for a bus or a friend, we treat that physical environment as a temporary, annoying waiting room.
We just plunge into our phones to escape it.
Yeah, the doom scroll.
Yeah.
But Aang treats a dusty roadside verge like an uncharted wilderness.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals a fundamental truth about curiosity. True curiosity does not require an exotic backdrop.
It just needs a little attention.
Right. It requires a prepared mind. A dedicated observer understands that complex biology is happening everywhere, constantly.
Yeah.
I mean, a roadside landscaping patch is a harsh, utilitarian microclimate.
Oh, yeah. Compacted soil, exhaust fumes.
Zero maintenance. The fact that any organism thrives there is a biological feat worth examining. Aang finds genuine inspiration in a random patch of dirt because that happens to be the exact theater where a remarkable survival strategy is playing out.
And that act of putting the phone away and scanning the underbrush leads directly to our botanical star today, which is the yellow walking iris, or Trimezia longifolia.
Such a fascinating specimen.
Okay, let's unpack this. How exactly does a plant walk?
Right.
I'm trying to visualize the mechanics here.
It's probably not what you're picturing.
Well, my first instinct is like creeping roots underneath the soil, maybe like how bamboo aggressively spreads out horizontally underground until it just takes over a whole yard.
That is a very common method of propagation for sure.
Okay.
But the yellow walking iris utilizes an entirely different above-ground acrobatic maneuver.
Wait, above ground?
Yeah. Based strictly on Aang's field notes, this plant earns its walking moniker through the generation of plantlets that grow right on the flower stems themselves.
Wait, so it grows miniature versions of itself in midair?
It does. I mean, think about it from an evolutionary standpoint. Relying on seeds is a massive gamble.
Because so much can go wrong.
Exactly. You need pollinators, you need the wind or an animal to carry the seed, and then that seed has to land in hospitable soil and actually survive its most vulnerable seedling phase.
That's a lot of ifs.
It is. So instead, this iris generates a fully formed miniature clone of itself at the end of a long stem. And as that clone grows, leaves, it gains physical mass.
So it just gets heavier and heavier.
Yep. Eventually, the weight of the plantlet overcomes the rigidity of the stem.
It's too heavy and just bends over.
Precisely. It arcs gracefully toward the ground, acting almost like a crane lowering a payload. The stem touches down a foot or two away from the parent plant.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And the moment that plantlet makes contact with the soil, it triggers root growth. It anchors itself, severs its reliance on the parent, and begins the cycle all over again.
So generation after generation, the plant effectively steps its way outward across the landscape.
Exactly. It guarantees its offspring are planted in viable soil right next to where the parent already successfully survived.
That is an incredibly elegant engineering solution to the problem of being rooted to one spot. I mean, it is moving, just in extreme slow motion.
Very slow motion.
But there is a funny twist in Ang's post here. Ang notes that the roadside plant was blooming beautifully, which caught their eye, but those heavy walking plantlets were completely absent during this specific observation.
Right. Eng was looking at the plant mid-cycle, basically before the reproductive plantlets had actually formed.
Which prompts an amazing admission that made me laugh out loud. Ang writes that if those plantlets had been present, they would have likely taken a specimen for evaluation purposes.
Oh, yes, the classic evaluation excuse.
Right. Now, I have to challenge this framing. Evaluation purposes sounds like a very clinical, official cover story.
It really does.
Is Ang a gentle, detached observer of nature, or like a rogue botanist swiping municipal landscaping for a private collection?
I think it's a brilliantly diplomatic way of phrasing it, honestly. But it highlights the hands-on reality of being a dedicated gardener.
How so?
Well, for someone like Ang, botany is not a spectator sport. It is participatory. You cannot truly evaluate how a plant walks or what kind of soil it prefers just by looking at it from the
I
sidewalk.
have to get in there.
Exactly.
Hmm.
True understanding requires propagation, dissection, and getting your hands deep into the root system.
So Ang was absolutely going to take a piece of this plant home.
Unquestionably. And honestly, it is the highest compliment a gardener can pay to a plant's resilience.
That's a good way to look at it. But because the plantlets were missing, the narrative shifts, right? Ang can't passively acquire the specimen, so this observation acts as a catalyst.
Right. Ang explicitly notes a plan to organize a field trip to local plant nurseries to formally acquire the species.
So the roadside tease was enough to trigger a dedicated hunt.
Yeah, full-blown expedition.
But embarking on a hunt to purchase a specific plant requires you to know exactly what you were looking for. I mean, you can't just ask the nursery for the yellow flower.
Definitely not. And that is where this roadside observation transforms into a lesson in biological deception.
Yes, because Ang spends a significant portion of this entry discussing mistaken identity.
And taxonomy is where the depth of Ang's 959 entries really pays dividends.
Ang points out that the flower petals and the overall visual aesthetic of the yellow walking iris look almost identical to a completely different species, the ground orchid or spathoglottis-plicata.
Which is wild when you really look at them side by side.
I am picturing convergent engineering here. Like,
Yeah.
it's like looking at a shark, which is a fish, and a dolphin, which is a mammal.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Right, because they do not share a recent genetic ancestor, but because they both have to survive in the exact same physical environment, water, the laws of physics force them to evolve the exact same streamlined body and dorsal fins. Are we seeing the same thing happen with these two flowers?
What's fascinating here is that you have hit on the exact mechanism evolutionary convergence. Despite looking so similar that an amateur would confidently label them both as orchids, the rigid biological reality is completely different.
So they aren't related at all.
Not even close. The yellow walking iris belongs strictly to the Iridaceae family, the irises. It has absolutely zero recent genetic relation to the Orchidaceae family.
But why would they evolve to mimic each other so closely? Like, what's the benefit?
Because they are competing for the exact same customers. Flowers are basically biological billboards advertising to pollinators.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, if a specific type of tropical bee or insect in a specific region is highly attracted to a particular petal shape, landing pad, and color arrangement, completely unrelated plants in that same region will slowly evolve toward that optimal design over millennia.
So the iris and the ground orchid arrived at the same visual solution to the problem of attracting bugs, but they took entirely different genetic paths to get there.
Exactly. It's parallel problem solving by nature.
Okay, but let me push back on this a bit. I understand why a biologist with a microscope cares about that lineage. But for an everyday gardener like Ang, why does this taxonomic distinction matter so meticulously?
Oh, it matters a lot.
I mean, if they look identical in a garden bed, why dedicate so much journal space to proving it is an iris and not an orchid?
Because beneath the soil, the illusion completely falls apart. and that is where the gardener's success is decided. Distinguishing between iridaceae and orchidaceae is the difference between a plant thriving and a plant rotting in your yard.
Really? How
They
so?
have fundamentally different biological mechanics. Many orchids, for example, have specialized aerial roots or require highly aerated, fast-draining bark mixtures.
Oh, because they usually grow on trees and stuff.
Yes, exactly. They evolve to grow on tree branches, drawing moisture from the humid air. Irises, on the other hand, often grow from rhizomes.
Which are like those thick roots, right?
Right, they're thick, fleshy, underground stems that store energy, and they require completely different soil structures and moisture retention.
Ah, I see.
So if Ang took this yellow walking iris, mistakenly thought it was a ground orchid, and planted it in an orchid mix, it would likely fail to thrive. Understanding the true family lineage dictates how the plant grows, how it processes nutrients, and how it survives winter.
Okay, that makes total sense. Assuming they are the same just because the petals match is basically a fatal gardening
A
error.
very expensive mistake, yeah.
And Ang is clearly obsessed with this distinction. The journal notes that this isn't even the first time the yellow walking iris has been discussed.
You're right.
Ang references having written about this exact taxonomic split before, back in part 757 and part 766.
Which is just a beautiful testament to the iterative nature of true learning. You don't just memorize a fact, check a box, and move on.
You have to revisit it.
Exactly. Ang is circling the subject over years, returning to the same roadside flower with fresh eyes and accumulated knowledge.
And this time around, in part 959, Ang wanted to visually prove this hidden biological difference to the readers, to show the microscopic reproductive structures hidden deep inside the blossom that definitively prove it is an iris.
But as we know, the physical world doesn't always cooperate with our digital tool.
No, it does not, which leads to a highly relatable frustration.
The mobile camera dilemma.
Yeah,
It is a brilliant juxtaposition in the text.
it really is. Ang is carrying a brand new mobile phone, and keep in mind we are talking about technology from 2026.
Right, top-of-the-line stuff.
But despite having this pocket supercomputer, Ang simply could not capture macro photos close enough or clear enough to adequately document the microscopic differences between the stamen and pistils of the iris versus the orchid.
It's a sharp reminder of the limitations of our daily technology when it meets the complexity of the natural world.
So what does this all mean? We have lenses that can film in 8K resolution, software that can instantly map a human face, and satellites that can read a license plate from orbit.
It sounds like it should be easy.
Right. Why is a humble roadside flower's anatomy defeating a modern smartphone camera?
Well, this raises an important question about how our tools are optimized. A smartphone camera, fundamentally, is engineered for human scale, relatively flat geometry.
Like taking portraits of your friends.
Yes, it is optimized to recognize faces, balance artificial lighting, and sharpen rigid lines. But when you plunge a lens into the throat of a complex blossom, you are dealing with microscopic, highly translucent three-dimensional architecture.
And the phone just gets confused.
Completely. The software struggles. It cannot figure out what focal plane to lock onto. It cannot parse the depth of the anther versus the stigma. Botanical structures just defy the simple algorithm designed for taking selfies.
It's a hardware limitation colliding with 300 million years of complex 3D evolution.
Exactly.
Someone else in Ang's position might have been furious. I know if I spent 20 minutes crouching by a dusty road trying to take a photo, only for it to be a blurry mess, I would probably just delete the draft of the blog post and give up. Oh, I'd be so frustrated. But that reaction would contradict the entire ethos of writing 959 journal entries.
That's true. Ang has stamina.
The technological failure does not defeat Ang. It barely registers as an annoyance. It merely delays the lesson.
Just a bump in the road.
Ang calmly notes that the microscopic differences will simply be a topic for future discussion, once a proper, dedicated close-up lens can be utilized.
A topic for future discussion. I love that phrasing because it completely recontextualizes what a journal is. We usually think of diaries as static records of the past, like a summary of what is finished.
Right, a closed book.
But Ang's notes are a living, ongoing conversation with the environment.
It acts as an incredible antidote to the instant gratification culture driven by the very smartphones Ang was trying to use.
Oh, that's such a good point.
If a piece of tech fails to deliver a result in 3 seconds, we tend to abandon the query. But a gardener operates on geological time, or at least seasonal time. You cannot force nature onto a digital timeline.
Just do what it's going to do. If the plantlets aren't there today, or the camera can't focus on the bloom before it wilts, you accept it. You put it on the pending list for the upcoming nursery trip, as Ang does, and you wait.
There is a profound biological philosophy embedded in that patience. Things grow at their own pace. The opportunity for learning will present itself again, provided you are still paying attention next season.
And when you're on part 959, the reader implicitly trusts that the pending list will actually be addressed.
Precisely. The macro photos will eventually be taken. The walking plantlets will eventually be evaluated. The conversation between the observer and the observed continues.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Let's pull all these complex threads together for you, the listener, because Ang has managed to weave a massive amount of insight into a very short, unassuming blog post.
Really packed it in there.
We started with the most mundane scenario imaginable, killing time by the side of the road. But through the lens of a prepared, observant mind, that dead time transformed into a masterclass on biological mechanics. We uncovered the acrobatic physics of a walking iris that literally bends its way across the landscape to guarantee its offspring survival.
And we dissected the deceptive mechanics of evolutionary convergence, learning exactly why a plant might disguise itself as a ground orchid to manipulate pollinators.
Nature's little con artists.
Right, and why knowing the hidden underground truth of its rhizomes is the only way a gardener can actually keep it alive.
And finally, we explored the fascinating friction between a 2026 smartphone and the three-dimensional complexity of a flower, proving that ultimate understanding requires the patience to return season after season, rather than just clicking a button and demanding an instant result.
It is a vital reminder that profound knowledge isn't exclusively locked away in academic textbooks or, pristine nature reserves.
It's right in front of us.
Complex evolutionary dramas are literally unfolding in the dusty, neglected municipal landscaping right outside your local coffee shop. But accessing that knowledge requires a discipline to look closely and the humility to accept nature on its own schedule.
Which brings us to one final thing to ponder. The next time you find yourself stuck waiting somewhere and you feel that almost involuntary reflex to pull out your screen and escape your physical surroundings, resist it for just 60 seconds.
Just take a breath.
Look down at the weeds pushing through the concrete. Look at the landscaping you normally ignore. Ang has now dedicated at least 3 separate, distinct journal entries, parts 757, 766, and 959, to decoding the secrets of one specific yellow flower spotted by the street.
It's incredible dedication.
If a single common roadside plant can harbor enough biological deception and mechanical genius to inspire that much ongoing curiosity, what perfectly ordinary organisms on your daily commute are you walking past right now, completely unaware of the complex, walking, doppelganger, double lives they're leading just inches from your feet?